Hello, everyone. We wish to welcome you all to our use and reuse of architectural and landscape heritage webinar, which is one, or rather the first of a series of webinars that will be laid out or rather hosted by the UIA Heritage and Cultural Identity Work Program. Just to bring you abreast to the objectives of this webinar are essentially to engage in questions of urban and sustainable development, rehabilitation, renovation, heritage management, and heritage management of existing sites, striving to establish high international standards for good practice. And secondly, also, it's geared towards promoting responsible heritage management, methods, and collaborates with UNESCO to protect heritage sites from human, natural, and climate change-related threats. This webinar, which you shall shortly be able to hear from our three esteemed speakers, is part of our roadmap that is intended to actually achieve these objectives. And just to start off, I wish to introduce one of our moderators, which is Manuel Laceda from Portugal. He's an architect specializing in cultural heritage, and he's an affiliated researcher to IHC Nova, FCSH of the University of Nova de Lisboa. He collaborates with the Monitoring Committee for the National Architecture and Landscape Policy in Portugal. He's also a member of Balculture Alliance, an advisory board member of ICOMOS Portugal, 7 years guest professor at the Department of Architecture, University of Autonoma, and the Department of Architecture, University of Lisbon, Lusofona. He's also a member of the European Commission on Commission for expert group on cultural heritage. He is also a member, a former focal point member for the World Heritage UNESCO Portugal, a former representative of the steering committee of the Council of Europe's Cultural Heritage Program, and a former co-representative of the steering program of the Joint Program on Initiative on Cultural Heritage. Welcome, Manuel, to start off the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Kassim. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome. I will then make a brief introduction to the topic of this roundtable. I don't want to bore you with too many theoretical considerations, because I believe that it's practice that inspires us. And for this, we will listen our three guests today, to whom I thank you in advance. First, it is worth mentioning that this theme of the use and reuse of architectural and landscape heritage becomes clearer when and more opportune as we understand its importance for the social, cultural, and economic development of the communities. It therefore refers to the role that interventions in cultural heritage may have in urban and non-urban contexts, especially those that are disqualified, depressed, or abandoned. As we all know, the use of built heritage and its reuse is perhaps one of the topics in the field of architectural heritage that has been most debated over time. The history of interventions on heritage shows us how time, mentalities, and contexts, as well as technologies or the economy, change the ways of intervening, including the criteria and the methodologies. Today, we live in a much faster time, and we seem to be surrounded by new problems that often make us questioning the meaning of the things we do and how we do them. So, I ask myself, what is the relevance currently of sharing ideas on this topic? In first place, I believe that cultural heritage and architectural heritage which is the result of a continuous interaction over time between expressions of different civilizations, being at the heart of many problems that the world is currently experiencing, can also equally contribute to resolving them in some way and on your own scale, of course. I am referring to climatic phenomena, migratory movements, hyperurbanization process, the accelerated growth of large metropolitan areas, desertification, and loss of population in many territories. All these processes are at the origin of fragmentation and the construction of societies, and therefore also cause the deconstruction of cultural identities and the weakening of individuals and their identities. Taking care of the heritage and taking good care of it and rigorously with shared knowledge and science means reinforcing this construction or reconstruction of identities, communities, and people. In second place, I introduce another point. The enormous mobility that exists today across the planet, the globalization and the exponential growth of information and communication technologies, with emphasis on social networks and the increasing use of global design tools based on information technology, which is a subject that concerns us architects, contribute to standardize places, cities, and territories. Contributes also to disrupt the mosaics of cultural diversity that is so rich and complex that characterize our places, our cities, and our landscapes. Fortunately, these new tools also enable more knowledge, more sharing, and the development of new ways of thinking. I am optimistic about this, and I think that many projects that are taking place around the world demonstrate this possibility. While globalization has a negative side in terms of standardization, on the other hand, it allows us to rewrite cultural mosaics made of complex interactions and based on new values, demonstrating the dynamic nature of cultural heritage. But for that, it is necessary to promote knowledge and quality, to promote the exchange of good practice, improve networking between universities and organizations, find bridges between different cultures. In third place, when thinking about this roundtable, we had as a starting point that architectural, urban, and landscape heritage only exists because there are communities that inhabit them, that work on them, and that visit them. That people are the beginning and the end of the idea of heritage, and that is people who give its meaning. That's why it must be used at the risk of being abandoned, forgotten, and eventually disappearing. Using heritage means that we are giving it continuity. And by reusing it, because the contexts in which it exists have changed, we are reviewing its potential, reviewing its characteristics and values, seeking to respond to the needs of the present time. The question we pose at our level as technicians, as architects, is how we should act so that the essence of heritage is not lost, so that the memory can continue to live. And I ask in this process, what is gained and what is lost? What strategies can we adopt to better respond to these challenges? And how can we better reconcile the need for community development with the need to preserve heritage? The three cases we will hear about today can help us reflect on these questions and be inspiring. That is the goal. They correspond to very different situations, both in their scale and in their typology, objectives, and processes. And they naturally reflect different cultural contexts, different visions, but all with a common purpose, preserving memory. I don't want to bore you any longer. I apologize if I've gone too long, so I give the floor to Monica Bahia Schlee, who will moderate this first roundtable. Monica Bahia Schlee is a landscape architect and urban planner and a collaborating professor at the graduate program in Design and Heritage in the Faculty of Architecture and Urbanism of the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil. She is currently serving as the ICOMOS Brazil Executive Secretary and as a National Counselor of the Institute of Architects of Brazil, which institution she represents at the UEA Heritage and Cultural Identity Working Program. So I give the floor to you, Monica.
Thank you, Manuel. Welcome, everyone. It is a pleasure to have you here with us. And I take the opportunity to thank our guest speakers for their availability to share their experience and knowledge with us today. I will begin by presenting Ricardo Rodrigues. Ricardo Rodrigues works as a municipal architect in Guimarães, in Portugal, since 2001. Being part of the team responsible for coordinating the rehabilitation of the historic center of the city. He wrote the management plan for the historic center of Guimarães and Zona de Couros, and he authors requalification projects for public and private buildings, as well as public spaces. He also authors studies and rehabilitation plans for degraded urban areas in Portugal. He coordinated the candidacy of the Historic Center of Guimarães and Zona de Couros as World Heritage, approved in 2023 by the UNESCO World Heritage Committee. Since 2021, he has been head of the World Heritage and Classified Properties Division, the municipal team responsible for managing, coordinating, and monitoring the urban rehabilitation of the city center of Guimarães. Ricardo will talk about the reuse of architectural heritage of Guimarães, he will bring practical examples related to different periods of this process, and will address principles and criteria consolidated collectively over the last 40 years. Welcome, Ricardo. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Manuel. Thank you for this invitation. I will now try to share my screen with you. Okay, is it sharing?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay. So I start by apologizing to everyone, because I will try to talk the most possible about what we have been doing for the last 40 years here in Guimarães in the 15 minutes that we are given. Starting by a brief introduction about what's in Guimarães, what's Guimarães, our main problems, some words and some images and examples on methodology and criteria, and what are we doing now and what's next. So Guimarães, for those who don't know, is here in Portugal, in the Iberian Peninsula, in the north of Portugal, near the littoral, and it's a territory that it's characterized by diffuse urbanization, where the center of the city has the main urban functions, uses, but most of the population is all around, still in a very rural area, side to side with a very industrial areas also. So for the old municipality, we have around 160 inhabitants, but only around 55,000 of them live in the city center. So this is important because this is where we are standing. We are standing on a soil, on a granite soil, with people that are still very linked to the rural processes, that these hands are testimony of it. But at the same time, linked to, most of us are linked to the industry, textile industry, shoe making industry. And so this is very present on the day-to-day basis, on the use of the landscape, on the use of the resources of the territory. Of course, this network joins in the storage center, in the city center, that in fact, we are talking about an historical city and the historical urban landscape. And so this is where most of the inhabitants come to visit, to see the monuments, the religious monuments, the military monuments, the most extraordinary examples on bourgeoisie architecture, and the layout of the medieval layout of the historical center. This is the place for gathering, for having a beer, for everyone to gather, and it shows layers of more than 1,000 years of history of urban development that goes back to the foundation of the nationality of Guimarães. Back in the 80s, our team started an operation in the municipality of articulating private and public interventions in the historical center, considering the use of the heritage and considering the resident population. This process was very important for the nomination of the Historical Center in 2001 as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. In 2012, Guimarães was European Capital of Culture, and in the application for this European Capital of Culture, the rehabilitation and the reuse of urban heritage was a main point in this application. And as it has already been said, in 2023, in September, last September, UNESCO, the Committee of UNESCO, approved the extension of the World Heritage Site, including the corridor zone. This also is linked to another process that we are undertaking, considering Guimarães to be a potential European green capital. So I will go back to the problems that we face on the day-to-day basis on the last 40 years. The heritage usually is the same, but the problems are changing daily and difficulties also. I start by an image of the 80s, early 80s, and of a suburban area where you see that there is no public space or no paving in the public space, and the construction of public or private architecture. This is very important on our day-to-day work because reuse and heritage use is many times facing backwards the development of the new city, the development of the growth of the city. And these two movements, reuse and new building, new developments, from our point of view, they must be planned and thought together. And that's why we are always pointing out the idea of a continuous city and of interdependency between medieval property and contemporary properties. What can each one give us, which richness each one can offer its inhabitants and its owners. When we talk about reuse, when we talk about the historical city center, we are not talking about scenarios. We are talking about places where people live, dwellings. And this is the image of one of the dwellings, a part of the house where an old man used to live. So these are the main problems that we face on the day-to-day work, which is to give better conditions for living in the dwellings, usually old dwellers, usually women, and that's a scenario that it's not so common. If you visit Guimarães, you cannot see it so well because the city seems very well taken care of, and it is indeed, but there is still a lot of work to do because in the backyards you can see the real life of the houses also. So if nowadays the historical center is considered unanimously as World Heritage, it was not so obvious 20, 30, 40 years ago. It was a derelicted space with derelicted buildings, with a lot of social problems, drug addicts, prostitution, well, the common problems to all European old cities. And so this is a process that I think can be useful in terms of methodology to many other places in the world, because it is not only cultural heritage that we are talking about in the sense of e-commerce, high standard heritage, but in the sense of common ordinary heritage, that it's our main focus. So that's the backyards of most of the nominated listed area, and in the backyards you see that these are ordinary houses, and that's good to be ordinary. This is not Disneyland, no. So considering methodology and criteria, this is very important to keep in mind that if we banalize through reuse most of these buildings, they will not be so good as the new buildings in the new development. So they have pros and cons and points against, and so they have to be underlined. We have to underline the points that are pro this heritage. This process considers the buildings, the municipal buildings and the public buildings, as this in the image. They consider a methodology of rebuilding, of conservation, using traditional techniques, namely based on timber. They consider the main responsibility of the municipality, that are the infrastructures and the public space. And so we have to create and to update constantly the public spaces in order to reuse and give new uses to public space and to the buildings, and therefore to make what we could say about an integrated rehabilitation, considering built heritage as buildings and the public spaces also, as we see in the images, some before and after photographs. And this is I would say that around 95% of our built stock is private owned, and we don't have money, we don't have capacity to interfere in this private construction. So we try to give technical support and use public financing to support some of the most needed owners in very simple processes of conserving roofs, of taking care of facades, the windows, all the points where water can go in. As you see in the image, the lady doesn't even go out from her house during the construction. So this is very important for us to underline that the dwellers are our main concern, to keep them living and not to expel them, because it's a reuse for them also. So this door is a main concept, urban and architectural concept, to repair and not to substitute. Although sometimes this can change when we talk about different materials like aluminium and all that, in order to conserve an urban landscape that might be ambientally, environmentally more coherent. So I'll show you some photographs of interventions in private dwellings that we undertake, using, repairing, reusing old materials, traditional materials. And at the end, you see that the clothes, the textiles are drying at the sun, because most of the stock is still lived. Of course, many old residences, very big, noble, aristocratic residences, are not able to be reused as residences right now, and they are converted, reconverted, in this case as a Kurt Hall, and usually as public buildings that are stuck and that are like needles in strategic points in the public space. 10, 15 interventions per year. At the end of 10, 20, 30, 40 years, we are talking of hundreds of interventions that at the end produce a new city, although one might say it's the same. I don't know if it's the same. It's a pretty strong update of it. What's next right now? We have extended the World Heritage Site, duplicating the area, and we are facing new challenges. We are facing proto-industrial heritage, a territory that it's been used for tannery, for leather, for skins manufacturers, at least for the last 1,000 years, in the same place, using mostly the same processes. Something that one can relate to the processes of Fez in Morocco, as we see in the image. In Guimarães, they are completely derelicted, but there is an urban landscape that it's still marked, that it still testifies this layer of the proto and the industrial heritage of the city in the core of the city center. These are recent images where you can see the tanks, the tanneries, the former tanneries. Of course, we have undertook many studies and plans considering the reuse of this heritage, considering the conservation, the archaeological surveys, and how can we intervene, change, adapt, reuse buildings of very different typologies and still conserve its integrity and its authenticity. Once again, this is a process that undertakes multiple layers: public spaces, collective spaces, open spaces, public buildings, private buildings, in an integrated intervention. As we see a few years ago, the same square before and after, and some images of some interventions that I undertook. I only choose some of my own work. And for the debate, we can talk, if you want, about some of these interventions. This is a former tannery that was reconverted, reused, and now it's a science center, mainly for youngsters to learn about scientific processes. So these are very, very precarious buildings, very unique. We don't have, but at the same time, they stand side by side with pretty ordinary industrial buildings from the 20th century, also a tannery that it has been reused. It's in reuse as an institute of design, property of the university. And so nowadays the tanneries have given space to university and to science and to public buildings. At the same time, as I've been telling you, explaining you, this intervention goes side by side with the refurbishing of dwellings to help dwellers to live better, to create bathrooms. Although there is a toilet, there is no linkage to the public system. That was, in fact, my first intervention as an architect many years ago. Some of these images show it, and some images of the after. Usually, these interventions are the minimum possible, as any euro, any dollar that you spend in the intervention, they have an impact on the rent of the dweller. So, as we want the dweller to keep living in these houses, we have to keep the investment of the construction to a minimum, and at the same time, this goes along with pretty conservative criteria in terms of urban and architectural conservation. This area, Coros area, the tanneries, are linked, they exist, and they are related to a network of water drainage and water system that relates to a landscape system, to once again, aristocratical and noble architecture, also to a system of public spaces with fountains and tanks. And throughout the period in which the tanneries ceased its use, all the problems start to happen, namely with these urban floodings that we assist in the city center. With when something stops being productive, it's not needed, it's not taken care of, and the problems start to arise. Of course, when we talk about the tanneries, we are talking about the deep part of a valley, and each time the new developments turn the soil not permeable to the water, the problems arise, and this generates new problems. That's why I wanted to linkage since the end of this presentation the idea of heritage to European Green Capital, to the idea of green and of landscape, because although in my presentation I have used the title reuse of architectural landscape heritage, the idea of landscape is not cannot be taken apart from the idea of urban planning and of architectural conservation. Everything goes along, it must be taken care and planned together because they are part of the same system. I think I have accomplished my 15 minutes. Thank you for your attention, and I can answer any questions that you may want to put me in when you see it's opportune. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ricardo, for this very sensitive presentation that brings the issue of the everyday, the ordinary, the popular heritage, which is at the heart of the living historic center of Guimarães. And thank you also, and congratulations for your sensitive interventions and projects.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right now, I will present our next speaker, Jarna Joshi. She's an architect, graduated in Tsinghua University in Beijing, in China, is specialized in historic conservation at the University of Pennsylvania in the USA, and cultural landscapes at the Jean Monnet University in France, having recently obtained her PhD in tourism management at the Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand. Jarna has more than 20 years of experience in architecture, conservation, and cultural landscapes, tourism, teaching in Nepal, China, Hong Kong, USA, Vietnam, Greece, and New Zealand. Currently, she is a visiting faculty in Nepal and is also involved with Kathmandu Institute, an NGO based in Kathmandu, for research, learning, and debate on the contemporary cities, leading to design and planning of future urban landscapes in the region. She has designed and supervised restoration and adaptive reuse projects in various parts of Nepal. Jarna will bring the case study of Bandipur in Nepal to address the issue of heritage conservation and sustainable local development. She will analyze the impact of this project implemented in 2007 and assess sustainability of Bandipur since then. Welcome, Jarna. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Monica. Is my presentation up?
Yes, it's everything fine.
Okay. Thank you, UIA and Indra, Manuel, and Anju for giving me this opportunity to present some lessons learned from my work in reviving Bandipur, a small hilltop town in Nepal. I will briefly introduce the project that revived Bandipur and then focus more on the lessons learned in the present context of Bandipur. Why would anyone restore or paint their houses? Houses are just to spend the night. This was the response by one of my interviewees, a local tea house owner, when I was researching local perceptions of landscape aesthetics for my doctoral research. This simple statement made me reassess my own views on what a village or a city should look like or mean for the wider world and not just architects. Why would or should we repair, reuse, maintain everyday architecture that makes the bulk of the built environment? In small villages such as Bandipur, a hilltop town in Nepal, between the capital Kathmandu and the popular destination Pokhara, it may be because of economic benefits, that is tourism. Bandipur is situated about 4 hours from Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, and is about halfway to Pokhara from Kathmandu. A thriving trading town between the northern hills and the southern plains until the mid-20th century, Bandipur lost its prominence in the 1960s when the southern plains of Nepal were opened up after malaria was eradicated. A new highway, the Tribhuvan Highway, was built along the river, bypassing this hilltop town. Bandipur used to be the district headquarters, but when the highway was built, the headquarters was moved to a more convenient highway town. We revived Bandipur in 2005-2007 through the EU Asia Earths program with partner cities Idra in Greece and Rio Maggiore in Italy, focusing on conserving the built heritage through tourism promotion. The broad objective was to promote partnership between local governments and communities in Europe and South and Southeast Asia. We had many national and international partners to support the project. The specific goals of the project was to develop Bandipur as a tourist destination with links to neighboring similar settlements, to enhance, upgrade, and conserve the built and natural environment of Bandipur. We also wanted to support the local enterprises and revitalize the local economic activities, and ultimately promote this network of settlements in Asia, partner countries, as well as in other parts of Asia and Europe. The main activities of the project included tourism-related infrastructure development, human resources and capacity building, as well as tourism promotion and publication. The main bazaar is preserved today as a picturesque town, popular with international tourists as a quiet town that has banned vehicles, including motorbikes, in the main bazaar, and domestic tourists for filming videos and video blogs and videos and things like that. So I'm going to present two examples of the interventions that we did. One of the first buildings we restored was the current Hotel Ganghar. It was a residence that had been abandoned and was falling apart. The house belonged to a prominent family with more than 15 owners. In Nepal, ancestral properties are usually down to the sons. This property had not been officially handed down or willed to a particular family member, so all male members had a stake on it. This complication probably saved the building being sold or demolished. One member of the same family leased it for about 20 years from the rest of the family members with the intention to convert it into a boutique hotel. Our objective with this building was to use this work as an example of repairing a traditional building that would save the built heritage and give it a new use that will provide some economic incentive to the owners. We also wanted to set an example of proper conservation work, respecting the original material, style, and construction techniques, even workers, as much as possible. The clients agreed as they were planning to promote it as a boutique hotel where guests should experience authentic and traditional village home. This work included repairing what was broken and replacing what was lost using the same material as much as possible. Of course, plumbing and electricity was added and upgraded with an additional floor as required by its new use. We are lucky to work with the lead carpenter, whose father was one of the original builders. Once completed, the building functioned well in its new use and at one time was one of the most expensive guest houses in Bandipur. But this building did not look new and was not very popular with the locals. I'll explain this with the next example, which is this was a simpler two-story residence with a tea shop on the ground floor and again converted into a guest house. This time we added a story as well as a balcony that is a distinct character of the town. Most houses in Bandipur Bazaar facing south have balconies on the first floor that shades the shop on the ground floor and creates a shaded walkway. We also added some decorative elements for lighting purposes. These additional elements have become quite popular with the locals, with quite a few new buildings copying them, sometimes with good results and sometimes missing them out. In the first example, we followed the more conventional path, focusing on repairing and reusing as much as possible with traditional materials and techniques. There were very few decorations or alterations. We even maintained the mud floor, which turned out to be too difficult to maintain and in its new use as a guest house and has been replaced by traditional ceramic tiles now. In the second example, we added a few decorations to highlight the building, which has been more widely accepted and copied, especially the balcony and the niches. The original balconies had been changed or removed when the businesses moved away from Bandipur, and they have been replaced now, completing the look of the bazaar as it was before its downfall. As I said, the balcony is a common element in the bazaar architecture. It also makes sense to have the shaded walkway for the shops and a space for enjoying the sun and the view of the bazaar on the first floor in the balconies. This transformation of Bandipur has been possible through tourism. One of the major interventions that we did that helped the revival of Bandipur was the repair of the main bazaar. The original stone paving had been destroyed when a vehicular road connected Bandipur to the highway. When we first worked there in 2005, it was either muddy in the wet seasons and dusty in the dry season, with diesel buses starting up at 5 a.m. to be ready at 7 a.m. At least that was how it felt like. In other words, it was either muddy or dusty and was very polluted, with shop not opening up outside and the bazaar use dominated by vehicles, mostly local buses or delivery trucks. With the repaving and banning of motorized vehicles, the bazaar today is enjoyed by a wider group. The shops and houses have opened up to the bazaar. It is a quiet place for tourists to rest and relax, enjoying the local life revolving around it. It is a clean and healthy space for all, for the elderly to socialize and the children to play. The repair of the pavement has repaired more than a physical structure. It has repaired the society to come together to maintain the bazaar and the houses. When we repaired the bazaar, we provided the materials and technical assistance. The residents themselves were responsible for the work supervision for the part of the bazaar in front of their houses up to the center line. This ensured that they were involved to see that the paving was done well in front of their houses. This local investment also ensured the continued maintenance, including cleanliness, which is one of the common observations of visitors to Bandipur. More importantly, the revival of Bandipur has added value to the local resistance and a sense of pride. The restored bazaar has become the identity of bazaar and is known nationally and internationally. The repair of public space, the bazaar promoted Bandipur as a tourist destination. We repaired a few buildings as examples, but once tourists started coming, the residents started repairing and maintaining their own houses, albeit for tourism purposes. Economy certainly plays an important part in the process of revival, be it everyday architecture or new cities. Bandipur was declared a preserved area. This declaration is important because it is proposed by the local community themselves as they started understanding the value of their vernacular everyday architecture. Most of the other preserved areas in Nepal, especially in Kathmandu Valley, was declared by the central government without any communication with the people living there. The declaration as a preserved area has its own issue because the bazaar has limited land and new development is increasing in the surrounding areas that have not seen direct benefit from the increased tourism activity. The new buildings constructed in the surrounding areas lack the aesthetic of the historic bazaar. In today's rapidly transforming and ephemeral world, repair is not pretty or glamorous for social media postings that has become ingrained in our daily lives, whether we like it or not. It is also seen as tedious and time-consuming when newer and shinier replacements are available with a flick of our fingers in our hands wherever we are. Repair, reuse, whether buildings, objects, tools, relationships, or society at large, requires careful thought and is specific to the particular object or instance. It needs skill and patience that may not be instantly downloaded from the myriad templates available for new replacements or constructions. It is also not advertised or marketed by vendors constantly and insistently in every form of media, from social media to telemarketing to television, giving a sense that repair is expensive, elite, or maybe more expensive than new build and replacement. Or repairs are not worth spending money or time on, perhaps also an embarrassment that one cannot afford a new building and is repairing temporarily. It lacks the newness value that society aspires for, especially when they're spending some money and hoping for an upgrade. This notion has been compounded by the international interest and funding in restoration and monuments and the reuse of heritage buildings as boutique hotels or museums. We are not taking time to learn to repair or learn about traditional methods, preferring new, which is often taken as technologically advanced and innovative solutions. We have also lost the patience of maintenance. In conclusion, repair and reuse of everyday architecture, mainly that have traditional architectural values, are getting increased interest in Nepal. However, this is mainly driven by tourism and adapted as guest houses in the niche boutique market. There are a few examples where the owner continues to live in a traditional house after restoration. I believe that reuse of traditional buildings will gain value and prominence in the future generations as climate change issues become more critical. Repair and adaptation of existing housing stock is the most sustainable approach when you take into consideration the cost on the environment when we demolish and rebuild, including the disposal of materials like concrete that uses too much energy to reuse. Thank you for your attention. Look forward to your feedback and any further questions in the discussion. I hope I was in time.
Thank you very much, Jarna, for showing the examples of how to improve sustainability of a historic city through the rehabilitation and the reuse of heritage, and to bring for us these interesting projects and your interesting presentations, bringing the voices of the locals and to show the delicate work of the professionals that lead to with conservation of heritage. Thank you very much. Now I will pass the floor to Giovanna Franco. Giovanna Franco is a full professor of technology of architecture at the Architecture and Design Department of the University of Genoa in Italy. Her research interests concern mainly cultural heritage, both traditional and contemporary, in terms of constructive features, values, maintenance and enhancement, reuse, sustainability, energy efficiency, and saving. She has been director of the School of Specialization, a postgraduate program in architectural heritage and landscape at the University of Genoa, and head of the master's degree course in architecture at the same university. She is author of numerous publications at international and national levels. Giovanna will present the long and interesting case of the monumental complex of Albergo del Poveri in Genoa, which has served as an urban regeneration trigger involving a local social institution named Institution of Service of the Person, the University of Genoa, and the public sector as key social agents. So welcome, Giovanna. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Monica, and thank you, Manuel, for this invitation. It's a great opportunity for me. I'll try to share the screen, and please tell me if you see my presentation. Can you see it? Yes.
Yes, but I think that you have to put in full screen.
Yes, it is in full screen. I think it is, yes. But maybe, because maybe you see also the success slide, no? Otherwise, I can use the PDF. Maybe it's better. No problem.
That's okay if you can.
Or I can
prefer to use.
I can also use this one. Is it better now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I use the PDF. I just made 2 small changes, but no problem. I will advise. Thank you, I said, for this invitation. I'll try to stay in 15 minutes, and but I would like to outline some brief indication on the context and on the sense, I hope, of this brief intervention, especially because I'm the third one, and I would like to make some connections also with the first 2 presentations. One major sense of this intervention is what Monica already said. This is a long process that has seen the interaction among different, let's say, actors and also stakeholders. And this is very important. The university, but even this, let's say, social institution that still is the owner of this complex, the urban municipality, and even, let's say, the end users, the citizens and the students. So this is for us a great opportunity of work. And other 2 things to say. One is that, especially in this old picture, you see the main facade of the Albergo dei Poveri, and it seems that we pass from an urban and landscape scale to an, let's say, building scale, but it's not like that, because you will see in the following slides that the Albergo dei Poveri is a part of the city, a city in the city, because it is very huge. Especially for that, and this is the third sense, let's say, of this presentation. I want to present, let's say, an architectural project or conservation and restoration project. I would like to outline the significance of the process that is behind the project, because it's impossible to face a conservation and reuse project of this complex without any huge program behind. 2 words on Genova, if someone doesn't know. Genova is a harbor city in the northwest of Italy. It is on the sea. it has a Roman or even a pre-Roman settlement, but it is well known as a medieval city, especially in what we call the Ripa Maris, that means the edge in front of the sea. That was a commercial, still now it is, but even in the medieval city. In the Renaissance and especially in the Baroque period, it became a very important city, at least in Europe, because all the bankers of Europe were Genoese noble families, what we call El Siglo de Oro. So this became the UNESCO site in 2006, a UNESCO site that is made by these streets that are pieces of landscape, beginning in the Renaissance period and then in the even 17 period. In the system of the Palazzo dei Rolli, I don't want to go further because I don't have time, but you can have much more information even on the website of the city. In the 19th century, the city expanded outside the city walls. We had different circle of city walls, and I will show you later. So I would like to share with you this example that still is ongoing. So it's a long process that dates at least since 2010. So this is the Albergo dei Poveri, and this is the first city wall. The first is this, a medieval. It belongs to, let's say, 12th century, and then other expansions. You see, this is another one, and the Albergo dei Poveri that was financed by a private noble, just one, as, let's say, an idea to host poor people. The translation is host for poor people, but you see that it's outside the wall, so it is also a way to, let's say, block these poor people inside this piece out of the city and control them. But as you see, you can imagine the orography of the city. You see there are hills like that, but there are also small valleys, and in these small valleys we have small rivers, and so this is also an urban infrastructure, because this huge complex you see how is this now? So it is completely inside the dense urban walls, and it is still close to the residential area dating the 19th century. I was saying before that there is still now a river that is going underneath, so it was a very, very huge infrastructure of the city, because they have to cut pieces of hill and create this great platform. And you see that still now a big part of an open space is still here. This is owned by the municipality. This is owned by this charitable organization that ended its, let's say, its use at the end of last century, and gave on loan to the university for 50 or even more years, maybe, in order to create, in the majority of these phases, we will see better, the humanistic pole, the pole of humanities. So we are speaking about a university pole, but not only. There are, of course, some, let's say, architectural model, San Lorenzo in El Escorial, sorry, in Madrid, Filarete before. This is the Ospedale Maggiore in Milan, but you see that this is something that has not completed at the first program. The first program was to have an absolute symmetry with north-south axis, that is even the axis of the church. And this is the main church that is in the middle of this complex, and the church was seeable from all these parts, the four parts. But it was not possible because funds were not enough, and so this part of the hill hasn't been cut, and so the complex now is, let's say, unsymmetrical. other pictures of the building. You see some pieces already restored and conserved, some in restoration, some in a very decay state. And you see also the state of the valley that is behind. It was used since, let's say, 20 years ago, or even less, 15 years ago, as the greenhouses of the municipality, but now you see a complete sense of abandon. Why did I choose this sketch, or more than a sketch, a drawing by Aldo Rossi on the left side of this slide? Because in order to face this huge renovation, reuse, conservation, and restoration project, it is not possible to proceed part by part as separate pieces. It was necessary to start with a program, as I said before, a general master plan. And this is the reason why university entered the University Group of Research, which I belong, and even one of the components of the didactic group of the International Union of Architects is belonging to. And it was so a great group of research because the technical office of the university had not much resources to face this project. A short timeline, very short, it could be much more detailed. On the left side, let's say the scientific research that we tried and we succeed, starting from 2010 and still ongoing. And on the right side, financing. This is a very important stage even of this process. Without financing, it's impossible to go over. So this is an occasion for us to involve the postgraduate school of specialization, the postgraduate program that was mentioned by Monica before, and to involve even master students and even specialists in our research program financed by the Ministry of the University, and even a regional grant that was given even to study energy efficiency, energy saving, and so on, just in order to understand that conservation and innovation, as Manuel said at the beginning, could go over, even in parallel, sometimes in conflict, sometimes not. We have to balance what we gain, as Manuel said, and what we don't want to lose. So some pieces that had been restored and some pieces that will be restored. The Albergo dei Poveri is a piece of city in the city. And one of the main objectives of this huge master plan was to give to the city again, give back this wonderful monumental complex that dates the 17th century and lasts in 19th century. It was a very long construction. You see that it will become a urban infrastructure, because the opening of this north-south aisle at the level of the urban street will go over and over and cross this future public garden in order to connect a part of the city. If someone of you knows Genova, knows that we are and goes and up and down cities, and we are used to enter from the roofs and goes over. But I would like to go faster, otherwise I don't have enough time. So general master plan thinks this is the state of conservation when we enter, is to recognize the church that's still consecrated, the public uses on the ground floor on this axis, the university uses, but even very important for the growth, economic, but not only the growth in terms of residents of this city that is one of the eldest cities in Genova, in Italy, Genova, to settle university residents, because we have a lack of them. Few pictures to show you the what has already been restored, the Aula Magna of the university in this aisle, that is one of the crossing aisle of the church that is at the middle, the library that is still nice in this aisle. These works were done before our intervention. After our intervention, we used this object, let's say, of part of the city in order to develop even scientific research and develop more and more knowledge. As more as we go, as much as we gain in terms of knowledge. And we have also to apply technological instrument to survey, apply the BIM and the GIS to collect all this knowledge, even in terms of conservation, state of conservation, degradation, and even in terms of energy demand. Which are our results? First of all, we rediscovered one, because this was bombed, and the majority of these roofs are made by reinforced concrete, at least in this part. This still is an original, a very interesting roof that we gain, at least with this provisional intervention, in order to avoid the rain water, as you see in this part. And this is one of the second results that we gained. We gained a lot of public funds in order to restore this part that will be restored very soon. Another results, the restoration and conservation of the church that is still open to public. Here you see some pictures. They stayed before. It was a sort of, let's say, conservation of old documents of the charity. This is a laser scanning cloud points, and this is after the restoration, of course. So you see the space in between and the church, before the church, and this is the church, and a vision from the elder. This is a very, very important sculpture of Mary, that is the Queen of Genova, made by Pierre Puget. The third result, as you saw in the picture that I show, is the restoration, consolidation, conservation, and reuse of the west side, opposite to the Aula Magna. Even this will be used as a huge space for auditorium and so on. And with the BIM, you see that we also were able to reconstruct the different phases of construction of this roof that as first will be consolidated, not redone for new, but consolidated. So some pieces will be replaced and some not. And this is the state of conservation, and you see the rainwater that is going inside. Other pieces and the state of conservation now, and other proposal. This is the proposal of the postgraduate or graduate students, because we in the huge master plan we will also be able to show how these spaces can be converted, and which could be even an architectural, or let's say new architectural appearance. But I think that one of the main results is the possibility, thanks to this program, to intercept, let's say, a ministerial and the public fundings, and even private fundings. This is next realization, now under realization, of the university spaces, residence in the north part of the city and in the east part of the city. The spaces are like that, so big pillars and cross-vaulted, and this is just an idea of how the this is an idea of the students and the postgraduate students, and how the residential could be box inside the box, or even on the wall high. I don't know. It depends on the scientific project. And then even this, that is the urban interconnection. You see the section. There is a river still that is accessible still now. I even was thinking about turbines, but it was too complicated to gain and to collect energy with the microturbines, but I had an idea in the valley. So this will be done at least. This is in few years. This is the state of conservation of this great corridor that on behind is at the street level, and you see that in the last part is underneath, so there will be even a staircase or an elevator to go up. And this is just an idea that was again used from our master plan to intercept this very huge funding, public and private funding, and with the idea that recalls the river that is beneath. Just as other famous example in Italy, like the internal street in Siena, Santa Maria della Scala. This is an internal street that is connecting. I use my hand like the Italians already do, but the Piazza del Duomo di Siena and the Fosso di Sant'Anzano, and you have the huge complex of Santa Maria della Scala, and an internal street that is going down from the up to the town. And even if you have ever been in Perugia, you see that even the walls in Perugia are a connection from the upper to the lowest part of the city. So this is the last picture, and I stay in my 15 minutes just to make an example what could be the restoration of the greenhouses, even using PV cells, photovoltaic. So we made also a huge work with an let's say a private and public company of energy to understand how is it possible to use renewable energies for the Albergo dei Poveri without losing its monumental and historical characters. So this is just an image that shows how many people, how many colleagues, how many person collaborated, even the laboratorio, the students, the School of Specialization, in order in more than 10 years, in order to obtain some results that we in Stefano Musa and I are very proud of that. So thank you very much for your kind attention. This is the entrance of the church after the restoration, with the statue of Emanuele Brignole, that was the founder and the noble, and these are the other nobles who collaborated to this huge, very huge construction. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Giovanna, for to bring for us this complex conservation project with a very thought-provoking case in terms of use of heritage, the original one and also the contemporary one, and the huge challenges that this intervention involves. So I would like to go to the next part of our meeting here. But first, I would like to ask to you some questions before opening the questions to the public. What are the main peculiarities and difficulties related to the use of heritage as an instrument for rescuing and re-signifying heritage in your country or in your region, the region you work? This question is for the three of you. Which one would like to address it first?
I give floor to the ladies.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. So I thought it was better to follow the same order of presentation. So Jana, would you like to?
Yeah. Well, heritage preservation in Nepal, and it's mostly limited to Kathmandu Valley. Actually, it's it's still a very new concept. Well, we did have traditional ways of repairing, restoring, but the traditional ways were not continued for a very long period. Different political systems and such. But recently, it has kind of like been revived, and it's linked directly to tourism, as I was showing earlier with my work as well. Um, so the so now in because it's related, it's been somehow linked to tourism. It's taking as something that is like expensive to do, or very elitist kind of work, and it's also that is also because the new materials, new technologies, it's always in the news, um, and the construction companies are using a lot of money to advertise and such. So conservation work for the monuments is different. For monuments, they get they get kind of the government funding, and or international fundings, if it's a internationally significant monument. But my focus and my interest right now is with the vernacular architecture, which private houses mostly, and it's very difficult to get funding from the government for that. There's no clear policies, so it's up to the owners themselves, and that's why the linking it to tourism is kind of working, but it's not enough. Like, it's one for one tourism. It's not very reliable, as we saw during the COVID the pandemic, and also because not every house can be turned into a guest house or a museum. So the challenge here is mostly the new construction, the readily available materials, the techniques, the workers are new, and for the traditional, it's slow and hard process. So I my challenge is mostly like how to convince the owners that it's more sustainable in the long run. It's more affordable in the long run if to restore than to build new stuff. So I hope that was what you wanted. That was your question.
Thank you, Jarna. Thank you. Who wants to add something to the debate here?
Well, I can answer. If I correctly understood, the question tries to understand what difference is there between our policy, local policy, and the national policy. Is that correct?
If you would like to address this issue, it's okay. It's we are trying to understand which are the main challenges in your region, concerning the reuse of heritage.
Yes.
And
well, in fact, thank you, Monica, for rephrasing it. I think it's interesting to share with you this idea, is that in the 80s, the idea that was the focus for the mission concerning the reuse of dwellings and reuse of the historic center and of the center of the city was mainly focused at national and local level on the problem of dwelling. At that time, the problem was concerned with poor people that lived in the historical city center, living in very, very, very bad conditions. And our focus, I started working in 2001, and my first many interventions, say all of them for many years, was to create bathrooms, to create kitchen, to, well, some of the photos that I showed in my presentation. Such precarious situations that most people that lives in European cities don't know that they exist in our cities. Although in the COVID period, we got to know in the news that in Paris, many people don't have bathrooms in their dwellings, in their houses, in the center of Paris, which for many was astonishing, but that's a fact of life in most of the cities, even in Europe. So nowadays, the buildings are, in our case, the buildings are the same. In many cases, the owners are the same. The city, one may say, is the same. And the problem is also the same. The problem, the subject, the dwelling. But the problem is completely different. Nowadays, we have tourism, we have universities, we have many people that wants to live in a fashionable historic center, and the prices have risen, have gotten so high that it's unbearable to live in the center. So now we are facing this problem. For one end, to reuse dwelling. On the other hand, how can we promote the reuse, considering conservating multiple typologies of dwellings, and conservating one main idea of authenticity of a city, which is to have people living, sleeping, waking up, putting the textiles in the windows to dry out, as an ordinary city. That at the end is our focus. Our focus is not to create a city for tourists, although they are very well taken care of, and we want them to come here. But mainly for the tourists, it's important for them to see a city where people is living, not a city where people is faking some kind of historical idea of a medieval city. That's not our concern.
May I add just a few words to the question?
Sure.
Concerning difficulties, maybe. That is quite important, especially in Italy. We are full of, like Europe and all over the world, cultural heritage that is stratified. Jarna, maybe, or Yarna, I don't know the correct pronunciation, was speaking about funds. The problem in funding, of course, is an overall problem. But I would like to also add a few other words that are timing. So especially when we are dealing with listed cultural heritage, timing of the process is going longer for authorization and so on, also for administrative process. But very important is the word competencies, that is strictly related to knowledge. As much as we are able to, let's say, to make a very huge, but we need money and time also for that, very huge knowledge campaign, as less we will have unexpected problems during the building site. And this is still very important because, as you have seen, I didn't have the time to go into, but we were able to quantify how much of the timber of the structure of the roof can be conserved and or how much has to be replaced. And this is very important, especially in public works, but even in private, because even private fundings are not, let's say, are limited. Okay, so this is important. I think that the competencies in order to know what we are facing as architect. Now, I'm not speaking as a teacher now, but as an architect, as a people who would like to face the historical heritage. Still, we should have more respect, even in the phases that are behind the physical interaction or the architectural design. still these are problems, at least in Italy.
Thank you, Giovanna. Well, we have some interesting questions here in the chat. And also some comments. Sala Bushman said that those are rich presentations. There is another question, there is another comment. Great presentations. It would be an eye-opener if we could also get to see through how the surface of the building of this scale is resolved. I think this is for Giovanna. And another one, are there master plans for preservation in these cities? Are the reuse buildings part of a master plan, or is each building determined as a singular project? There is another one, because we have 6 open questions here. I will read 3 and then the other 3 after you answered, okay?
Monica, sorry.
Sorry.
I didn't know if the questions were addressed for me, and I have already answered 3 other more, so you could probably read them also.
Yes, I will do that.
In the answer.
Because,
okay,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
no problem. The third one that is opened is, can you tell us some of the tips regarding documentation and its need during any course of intervention? About the phase of documentation, level of documentation, and so on. Okay, so one of the questions address the service of the building of this huge scale, and is addressed to Giovanna. The other one talks about master plans for preservation in all those 3 cities. And the third one is about documentation. Which one would like to begin?
So if you would like, I try to answer to the services that I think that the first services, the question means technical services like plants and heating and so on. Do you think that I understood correctly? I ask you technical plants, and I think so. Services, no? And this is very important because this is very huge. What I completely didn't mention in question of time is that on our, let's say, knowledge of history is not only the history of 17th century, but also the history of maintenance of 19th century, from which we could see all the technical drawings, and we could see all the traces and pipes of the heating, for example, system and water supply in 19th century and 20th century, when the whole building was used for poor, because this still was for hosting poors. So in the PIM in the GIS that are, this is another indirect answer to documentation. We had a lot of information, and we have to collect them not only in folders in our laptop, but we constructed a huge GIS system in order to collect in different parts all these different types of information, and even in the BIM. So it was possible to know, especially in the area in which we are, or the municipality or the university will do work, we are able to know where the pipes inside the walls are passing through, in order to reuse them and not to destroy again parts of where the old walls, in order to make new pipes and so on. And we made this huge work with the engineers, that engineers not only belonging to the university, but to this azienda that was Ansaldo Energy, when we made all this study on energy demand, even for heating and cooling. So we also had a proposal for that. But the idea was conservation. Do not do again, but please use the same traces of the past.
Thank you, Giovanna. Do you want to add something concerning the master plans for the city of Genoa?
We have more than a master plan. We call the Piano Urbanistico Comunale, that is an urban planning for the whole city, and this is divided into pieces, and there are area of conservation, but this we just have some let's say norms or technical norms, because as I said before, if the monuments or the historical monuments are listed, first of all, we have to stay under the superintendency, that is the local offices of the Ministry of Culture. So there is not a general master plan for the whole cultural heritage of Genova, but there are differentiated different areas that will be under, let's say, separate regeneration projects. This is the administrative way to manage the city.
Thank you, Giovanna. And Jana and Ricardo, you want to go ahead and
let me go
add
first,
something?
because my answer is very brief in both of these questions. For Bandipur, there's no master plan as such, but we started, like I said in my presentation, we try to do it as to set examples with the work, so that the locals can actually do the residents, the homeowners can do the work by themselves. So we provided trainings for masons, carpenters, and business owners, and all sorts of things, guides, and many others, so that the locals are capable themselves to carry out the work. And as Giovanna was saying earlier, timing is very, very important. When we are doing the work, doing the project, Nepal was actually going through Maoist conflict, so internal conflict. So, but at the end of the project, the conflict got resolved, so it was good timing, and so it kind of took off from the so timing. Yes, it is very important, and then because up to that point during the conflict, tourism was down, even domestic visitors were not traveling. So once there was the peace agreement and people started going to Bandipur, the tourism took off really very fast, and which we were not actually expecting it to take off so quickly. And so so the good thing about this all is, as up to now, that's the investment going into Bandipur is mostly local investment. There's some interest from bigger cities like Kathmandu, but it's mostly the local residents, the homeowners themselves renovating the buildings. And like I said earlier, it's the rural municipality. It's not even a urban center. It's a rural municipality. So the rural municipality has declared it a preserved zone. But again, there is not much in terms of regulations or control, except that maybe you're not supposed to demolish the building, and or if you have to rebuild as is. But like I said, the municipality is not very well equipped in terms of manpower and technical manpower as such. So, but I recently heard that they are working on bylaws to help guide the restoration processes. So hopefully in the near future, there will be some kind of regulations and bylaws. But I was, Ricardo, I was very surprised and pleasantly surprised to see there was so much similarity between what, well, not so much similar, but there was some similarities between your work. Yeah. Scale is much different, but it's good to learn from your projects.
Yeah, me too. Well, answering the questions. As Giovanna said, also in Guimarães, there is a major plan for the old municipality, Plano Diretor Municipal. And this establishes some rules for the city center and some strategies, very general strategies. Concerning master plans, as a word that might be definable as smaller areas of work, we have undertook one for the corridor zone, namely for the problems that this area offers us concerning the reuse of former tanneries. As I think it was clear in the presentation, I hope it was clear, the existence of thousands of square meters of tanks and water and very vernacular buildings is a great challenge that had to be tackled through a master plan in order to underline the problems and to underline the opportunities that this area could face. This master plan has settled the strategy that has been put into place by the municipality and the university in order to reuse the buildings for universitarian I'm sorry for this colloquial speech, but for many different services from the university. On the other hand, I'm answering the second question already. For the master plan, as I was the author, I can talk freely about that. I know the importance of studying documentation, namely old cartography that we have, although certainly not as Giovanna in Genoa, we lack a lot on documentation, especially because most of our city is very vernacular and there is no documentation. The former plan of the city is from it seems to be from the 16th century. It was found in Rio de Janeiro in the National Library in 2012. And since then, we only have plans for the 19th century. And these plans are not very detailed, so we lack a lot on documentation. Although for public spaces, this has been very important, namely reopening, reusing, if you want to say, readapt the city, regaining public spaces that were privatized throughout time. We have done this, and we are still planning on doing that. We're planning on re-putting a sense of collective space. For instance, the tanneries were almost part of the public space. One that walked through the corridor zone walked through the tanneries. There were no walls dividing the private property. This is something that we are getting to know, studying documentation, old photographs, and with the help of archaeologists also. So history helps us rethink and design the future, if you might say, in order not to innovate without having a strong support on the knowledge that we have from the past. That's very important. And at the same time, as we face strong interventions in the buildings nowadays, we have also proportional archaeological measures, and archaeologists bring us a lot of new documentation and a whole new information about the layers of the buildings, and this is being very rich in the understanding of the evolution of the city, and helps us having new criteria for new interventions. That's the second part of this question that someone asked. Marla asked, are the reused buildings part of the master plan, or is each building determined as a singular project? I would say in our case, both are can be considered. On one side, we have a general idea, a general objective aim for what a tannery should be, but then each specific existing building, one might say, must have a specific master plan to face it. At last, answering also some measures that are mandatory for UNESCO. We also have a management plan for the whole historic city center and buffer zone and wider zone. That's a current challenge to understand how can we face this concept of wider setting, and we are doing this under the revision of the PDM of the general master plan for the municipality, in order to the macro planning settles a pyramidal hierarchy of urban planning that does not provoke or does not struggle with the idea of urban conservation and reuse of heritage. I'm sorry, because I'm mixing a lot of subjects, but that's part of life, I guess.
Something interesting.
Yes, very interesting.
Yeah, earthquakes. I see a question on earthquakes. That is even very important, I think, in all of our three contexts. Not only in Portugal, it's a matter of regulation, as the question says, but even in Italy, and I presume all over. And unfortunately, one of the huge public funding in Italy in the last, let's say, after the recovery plan or during the recovery plan, so since 2020 to 2024, we had a great funding campaign for seismic improvement of cultural heritage. So this is a very earthquaking argument, because I've seen a lot of terrible interventions. In the case of the Albergo dei Poveri, of course, we had on our shoulders even the experts, engineers, experts in enhancement to earthquakes of ancient buildings. And of course, the principle of conservation are the first. But have you, as you have seen, the monument is so huge that it's not difficult neither to open a small door, and you don't change the seismic behavior. So in that case, it is quite easy. But I've seen other cases in which, especially public administrations that had no competencies, again, the word competencies, on cultural heritage, proposed intervention of consolidation on parts of the city that really are terrible on public parts. So it is quite difficult to convince them that it could be dangerous. And there is another question, again, that could be linked on the renovations and the modern available materials. So we prefer to go in the same way as Gianna and Riccardo showed us. The university decided to replace all the roofs that was remade after the bombing of World War II in reinforced concrete. They demolished them, and they are reconstructing them using natural wood. So we are able to use again the natural material, and we decided to try to replace with modern materials as, let's say, PV cell in glass, where the glass is in the greenhouses behind, not to combine. And even the roofs will made by slate stone, like in the tradition. So even changing scales from the small scale of the small buildings in Guimarães to the Albergo dei Poveri, the principle could be the same.
This is a very interesting question that you already addressed. An anonymous attendee was talking about the authenticity issue. So the question, I think that it's very interesting and it's very opportune in terms of the challenges of conservation, heritage conservation. So what about the impact of these renovations using modern available materials in terms of the issue of authenticity? So if you, Ricardo and Jana, would like to add something to this?
Yes, I can. Well, I think I tend to separate correctly or wrongly the two questions. On one side, integrity, and the other side, authenticity. In terms of integrity, we avoid destroying. We avoid demolishing. That's the first main aspect. And doing that, we try to preserve the most of the existing resources that we face. On the second, and this was, it might, for many of us experts, this is not contradictory, what I'm going to say now, but for who is not expert, it might seem contradictory. But when we didn't have money from the promoters, it was easy not to destroy. Nowadays that we have more money, and tourism also is not the main focus, but it also brings more money to the promoters, there we face more destruction, anger. And we try to do, answering also this idea of authenticity. For us, or for me personally, it relates to what Giovanna importantly was stating before, to the competence. We still have a lot of men, usually men, that know how to deal with timber, with the traditional techniques. And we try and we force even new walls in old buildings to use traditional techniques, although they are new. It's new wood, but the techniques, it's the same. I think we could say like a Japanese style idea of a concept, preserve the system and not only the materials. Those are two different areas that are very important for us. On the other hand, authenticity, it relates to the idea of reusing the buildings. So it's important that houses are still houses, although a house today, a dwelling today, has nothing to do with a house and with a dwelling 50 years ago. But still, a house is a house. It might be a house. It has a private area. It has a more public area, a more, how do you call it? I don't know, representative area. And this is very important on the concept even of master planning, because many times we face the idea, for instance, of using the inner part of the quarters to be collective spaces. If you do that, you are demolishing a concept of private spaces within the collective system of the city. It's important for us to preserve this idea of at multiple scale levels of the authenticity of the city. In order to stop talking, I would like to address another issue related to earthquakes that once again relates competence that Giovanna talked before, because one of not only facing earthquakes, we have when we only did conservation works, the constructors repaired, conservate, and that's it. Now that we are facing multiple subdivisions of dwellings, a big rise on the subdivision, and so much more people are living in the same house. You have more weight in the structures. You have more money to invest. We tend to think that measures facing earthquakes and facing any regulations must be put into place. The problem is that when you are dealing with existing structures, usually, at least in Portugal, we don't have competence to certify that the existing structure is able to survive 200 or 300 years more. And that's one of the problems that we face, is that when you need to certify to be and to accomplish rules and regulations that are not, that don't take into account the existent heritage, we face a problem, because usually the regulations are made for new built buildings and not for existing ones. And so we are each day facing new challenges and moving on, trying to understand how come for each case we apply different measures, considering the opportunities and the availabilities, because as I think I said before, some years ago, and sometimes what we are facing is the lack of bathrooms. Is not, of course, I'm not saying that earthquakes are not problems, but we are still in a stage, in many cases, in a preliminary stage of infrastructural level, and that's so sometimes it doesn't seem as so, but it is. So we are facing multiple times of problems at the same time. Some of the problems are still medieval problems, and some of the problems are 21st century problems, like energy efficiency and solar system, solar power, I don't know what. And so we are at the same time with multiple level problems. I don't know if I'm being clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. Jana, would you like to add something?
Yes, and I would like to I was looking at Ricardo's answer in one of the questions. It's like these all issues are linked together. I think it's new materials, the authenticity, integrity, and this discussion is very apt in saying it's reuse. I mean, like so it's more about how we can give heritage another life, in a way. And here in Nepal, at least, I find the monuments and the dwellings are two different categories. That's how I see it anyway. And because monuments, they have specific use, for example, temples or palaces or whatever. And whereas the dwellings, the houses, the ordinary houses, the people living in them, and their lives have changed, our lifestyles have changed, so it has to be adapted to not just the present context but for the future as well. So in that sense, like for urban conservation or conservation of vernacular architecture, modern technologies, techniques, and modern materials, to some extent, at least, like plumbing, electricity, that all that has to come in, of course. And but the overall the overall scale, the overall form, the materials, as long as they are followed as much as possible, I think we can it's it will be more feasible, because that in that way it will be more adaptable to the future. So that I think, reuse, that this is, again, as I was saying in my presentation, it's the most sustainable way of doing things, because demolition and we're talking about earthquakes. Nepal is also prone to earthquakes. Kathmandu Valley just had a big one less than 10 years ago, almost 10 years now, in 2015. And we have like a big one, a big one every 100 years or so. So the last big one was before 2015 was in 1934. At that time, most of the buildings were built with bricks, timber, and mud mortar. And now, after the 2015 earthquake, this mud mortar and bricks and timber were the assumption was that those are weak materials. So everyone is going into concrete and cement, which we were able to rebuild after the 1934 earthquake as well as 2015 earthquake, because a lot of materials were salvageable and reusable. But in the next earthquake, and that's going to be another one for sure, concrete, cement, those materials will not be able to be reused. So that's going to be quite a challenge as well. So I think for the in terms of materials and styles, I think it's we need to be able to adapt it for the future, but at the same time, try to be as sustainable, use sustainable, environment friendly materials and construction technologies that have been tested for hundreds of years, and survived hundreds of years. So but for some monuments of international significance, World Heritage sites, maybe we have to be more specific and more use traditional materials, technology as much as possible.
Thank you, Jarna. Well, we are running out of time. There are still some very interesting questions by the public, but we have to close the session, unfortunately. I would like only to, before asking our guest speakers to say their last considerations, I would like to leave a final question to them, which is what possible recommendations can we build from your experience, each of you, at this meeting concerning the theme of use and reuse of heritage? I would like you to give your final considerations, and then we pass to Manuel and to Cassim and Anju to say the last words and finish our session. Thank you. And thank you very much. And thank you very much for your great presentations and experience that you share with us.
Well, following the order of the presentations, I'm starting then. I think that well, when thinking about this presentation and my motivation for doing it, right now I think we are at the moment, and I think within these presentations from our three presentations, I think the concept of landscape, of reuse of the landscape is very important. I don't know if that was so relevant when I started working. At least it was not so clear from the people who I learned with working. This concept of integration within the wider setting, using the UNESCO concept of landscape. And well, Giovanna talked about the river that is running underneath the building. We saw in Nepal photographs also the water spoiling the public spaces. I'm saying spoiling because right now water is at the same time scarce, very expensive, and at the same time a problem because we are facing climate changings, floodings, new developments that destroy the characteristic of the natural soils. And I think right now it's very clear, I guess, that this idea between what's outside and what's inside heritage is it must be clear that it's a part of the same system. And I think that this idea of reusing heritage it must be also very clear in the sense of reusing landscape and reusing the natural resources, because at some point, if it's easy to move a river from one point to another, it's even easier for nature to get it back on tracks and to destroy what has been done. We have learned a lot of lessons in L'Aquila, in the United States, well, everywhere. And many of us, perhaps I'm also one of them, we don't learn from these lessons. And one of the important things of heritage is that we can learn a lot from it. That's where I'm in Portugal, as in Nepal. We also have different concepts for monuments and for current dwellings, for ordinary architecture. In this presentation, I try to underline much more the ordinary architecture, because the ordinary heritage is the one that I think it needs more our attention. And that's why I talk more about it, and that's why that's our main concern, because it's kind of easy for the state and for everyone to understand the importance of a castle. It's very difficult to explain the importance of a door of a whole house, although sometimes this door is older than the castle. So in terms of antiquity, of technology, of cultural importance, it's difficult to communicate and to explain it. Especially when you buy the building and you want to tear down the door to make a new restaurant, because that's your investment and you will earn money from it. So this is reuse. This is the problem that we face every day. We each day we know more about what we should conserve. Each day we know more about the mistakes we have done in the past, and we try not to repeat them in the future. And each day it's a challenge, because we are all very creative, and each day someone appears with a new idea to in order for you to have to rethink again on the concept of how can we conserve and demonstrate that we learn a lot if we conserve and if we build and if we take care of the built and natural environment in a more educated manner. Educated doesn't mean going to the university. It means knowing what we are facing, what's a tree, what's a fruit, and knowing what we are destroying, especially. And many times we don't know. And that's why we do a lot of mistakes. I'm talking about myself. So, well, thank you very much for your attention and for your experiences. I learned a lot with you, and I hope to continue in contact with most of you in order to share our experiences together. Thank you very much.
Can I go next?
Thank you. Yes, sure. Thank you very much, Ricardo.
Yes, I was just going to say the same, like Ricardo, as said most of the things that I was also thinking. And this session has been great because there was so much to learn from both presenters. and also gives me, more like motivation, because it's, well, working here, we think like working in Nepal is very difficult, but seeing that, you face the similar challenges, that gives us more like motivation to continue the work. And so this what I've taken from this is, Ricardo at the beginning said that this project has, or that work in the town has been going for more than 40 years. And that is the kind of work that is, should be done here in Nepal as well. But so far, because of the political things and fundings and all that, we have not been able to do it. But it's slowly happening. So like I said, this private houses, it's usually about small stuff like mending the roof or plumbing or doors and windows, than big stuff. So that if some kind of like schemes or some kind of like technical support can be done for that, then that would be very useful, I think, to continue with this kind of work, especially with these small houses. And I found that Jovna's using the students, and we are working with the universities to give options. That is quite interesting as well. I also teach at the Kathmandu University and other colleges here, Himalaya College in Nepal. So we've been trying to use the students to do documentation, take the students out to document villages, and then learn about the vernacular traditional architecture, and give do some proposals for the local community. So I think that was also a very good learning here. It's what we do now. It's also very important to continue doing it, and to involve universities and students, and also general awareness for the I think, like, for conservation work in Nepal, I usually say like more than 70% of my work is just talking to the people, like trying to convince them little by little. So yeah, so this was a good session for me to know that it's conservation is a very slow and long process, and we just have to bear with it and go with it. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, John. Giovanna.
Yes, I will add just two brief things. One recommendation, because you were asking us a possible recommendation, comes from a very interesting chatting. There are very interesting interventions and comments and so on. So one comes from Rabia Harraka, I don't know the pronunciation. He or she, I don't know neither the gender, is suggesting us that there is no conservation and no restoration, no reuse without speaking about permanent maintenance. This is very important. You have seen the Albergo dei Poveri after 20 years of lacking of maintenance. So maybe it was possible to preserve much more, starting from the roofs. So it is absolutely necessary to go on, not only with the scientific research, but even it should be compulsory for public buildings to have the conservation plan after the conservation management plan after the works. One is this recommendation. The second is, especially in Italy, that we are used each time to start again from the beginning. Instead, we should make a treasure of all the experience, and this is an opportunity, like this talk, that we have a great opportunity to share. Although I had to say to Ricardo that I was in Guimarães in September 2022, and maybe you were with us. I was in a group of the Association of European Architectural Education Schools. I don't know. Some of you were with us in the tour in Givares. So it's nice to say this at the end. Thank you. I think that I stopped speaking here.
Thank you, Giovanna. And I pass the floor to Manuel.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Monica. Well, I would like to thank our guests, Ricardo, Jarna, and Giovanna, for sharing their knowledge and experience, all so inspiring. It is through exchange that we can move forward without a doubt. I would like to leave here 2 or 3 final notes on aspects that seem relevant to me. First, knowledge and quality is fundamental. In these times of ultra-fast communication and urban and landscape transformations, it's important that we continue to use as a basis the set of tools that the various disciplines involved in interventions in architectural, urban, and landscape heritage provide us to support our projects. At this point, new information technologies are welcome to the protection of the heritage. Second, the use of heritage is basic for its permanence. Collaborative work is essential, such as create, develop, and involve communities related to heritage in our projects. Articulate institutions from different areas, such as organizations responsible for heritage, universities, science, the private sector, individuals, leaders, and politicians. To know how to listen, to integrate, to share could be the key to the success. Third, the use or the reuse of architectural and urban heritage based on a good knowledge of what we are going to design must consider the heritage's receptive capacity for new programs, on principle that it will be better to conserve and repair, favoring minimal intervention in order to maintain the authenticity. And finally, the reuse of heritage must allow modernization with a view to meeting the current operating needs of the spaces and thus the introduction of contemporary design. Creativity is part of the heritage process. The interpretation of pre-existences, knowledge of their logic, their history, their types, and construction methods and materials can feed and inspire the project. The history of architecture, cities, and heritage was made like this. And thank you very much. And now I give the floor to Anju Mala or Kasim to close this roundtable.
Thank you. That was a very good session, very motivating, inspiring. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience also enjoyed the session. I would like to thank our presenters, Ricardo, Jarna, and Giovanna, for your precious time and for sharing all the knowledge and experiences that you've had. I would also like to thank Monica and Manuel for all the effort that you've put in to make this webinar happen and for your smooth moderation and conclusive remarks. I have to thank the UIA Secretariat, especially Miwati, for the smooth running of the technical aspects and facilitating all our last-minute test meetings. We would like to thank all the audience who have joined us today and look forward to your full support in our upcoming webinars relating to heritage and cultural identity. I would also like to take this opportunity today to let our audience know about what the Heritage and Cultural Identity Work Program is doing. We are working on 6 themes. The theme today was architectural and landscape heritage for communities, use and reuse. The other themes that we work on are slave trade heritage, vernacular heritage, heritage and tourism, heritage management within the urban
within urban renewal, and the last one is heritage in the context of natural disasters. So I would like to take this opportunity to ask all our audience, if you are interested in some of these topics, you can connect with us. We are always in search of presenters to run our other webinars. And the next program that we have is on 16th November at the KL Forum, the UIA Forum in Kuala Lumpur. We have a roundtable session on slave trade heritage, and we are also working on a pre-event in form of a webinar before the KL event. So we really look forward to all of you joining us, contributing towards our goals. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we look forward to meeting you at other times also. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Cassim, do you want to say some words, or we can close the session? You are mute. You are mute.
You are mute, Cassim.
Yeah, I was saying that actually you've done quite a good job of actually doing the closing, and before that Manuel had done a very nice summary. I don't want to dilute anything, just to say thank you to everyone, all our speakers, for setting aside the time to be able to be with us and giving us your insights. There are a lot of things that I wish we can be able to discuss in other forums, because here actually it will go much, much more. Yeah, but now probably there are other sessions that we can have where we can elucidate some of the issues that have come up in this discussion. And now that we've had your experiences, I think you should be willing to be able to really come back and give us more, because as we always say, knowledge is insatiable once somebody is given the opportunity to actually get to know some of the issues that people are facing out there. And I tend to agree with Andrew that we have several forums that many of you, in terms of your expertise, can come to participate, in terms of not only as resource people, panelists, or even as in participating. And we'll be looking upon you, including you and your colleagues and your institutions, to actually support us in this. Thank you very much. Thank you, my moderator, Manuel, and Monica, plus my co-director, Anjo, for the nice closing. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Not forgetting, because the International Union of Architects Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Muriati. Thank you for your help. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.